Hello Trojan fans, and welcome to another edition of the Trojan Football Coach's Couch. I'm your host Jody Kinney, joined as always by North Hall head football coach Dave Bishop. And before we get started, I want to send out a special congratulations to the 7-under junior Trojans, coached by John Green, going from memory there, and the 7th grade junior Trojans head coach Shane Clark on winning the NGYFA Super Bowl this past Saturday.
4 straight.
4 straight for Shane Clark, his career, as he moves out to the junior Trojan coaching pasture. Hopefully he'll come back eventually. But switching over to varsity, of course, coach 34-21 win over Dawson County. Everything you wanted in the game, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, there was a lot of things that folks probably didn't know. We went in and lost our number 1 long snapper and short snapper, our number 2 long snapper and short snapper, and it did get us a little bit. I think it cost us a PAT at one time, and then it cost us 7 points. So, but we've been working on it, try to get that fixed going into this week. So
yeah. Interesting feel of the game. We had a 20-0 lead. We're about 4 minutes into the second quarter, and from there, it was basically just hold and serve for the rest of the game. Lead never got above 20, never got below 13. It was basically just traded a couple 3 touchdowns, and they got one right at the end. But the two things that strike me most is number one, what a big rebound from the disappointment of the previous week, and number 2, maybe our most complete game of the season.
Yeah, both offensively and defensively, I think we did a tremendous job. Coaching staffs put together a great plan. One thing that over the last few weeks, we feel like we have in Bradford Burgers is a tremendous runner. Mm-hmm. And I told him all week, I said, son, you're gonna be a big part of what we do this week, and he took it upon himself to, when his opportunities were there, to do it. Obviously, we blocked well. And defensively, we put in a game plan a little different than normal. We're typically a 4-2-5, and our goal was to say, okay, we're going to put 5 in the box, run the ball. And what most people do, and what we've done in the past, is we go with a 3-man front and a 2-linebacker look, but it's so different for our kids. I said, look, talk to the coaching staff. I said, if we're going to put 5 in the box, let's go 4-1 and allow those front 4 guys to do what they normally do and keep people off of Jeremiah T-Lander. Who's the guy in the box. And so we executed it pretty well. It wasn't perfect, obviously, considering we had a short amount of time to do it, and it's difficult to do. Mm-hmm. But our kids, for the most part, I think executed things pretty well. The downside of that is the quarantines that we had showed, because there are some positions that we normally rotate that we weren't able to, and it kind of hurt us in some spots where we were down to our number 5 in that position on the field as a starter, and it's just part of it. It's been what we've gone through all year, so hats off to everybody to get through that situation.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a lot. That's going to be a recurring theme all through our talking about this game. Let's go about the offense first, and just the stats I pulled up. Rochester 8 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Puryear 14 carries, 107 yards. Howell, 20 carries, 145 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Puryear had the other touchdown. And it can't be overlooked, Austin Atha, 8 carries for 22.
Right.
And so a couple big things about that. Number one, you got over 100 yards rushing from your tailback position. You got over 100 yards rushing from your quarterback position. And you got over 100 yards rushing from your halfback position. It makes it kind of hard to defend, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a spread mentality in the wing tee. You're
right.
You're going to spread it to every kid you have, and if you watched, we had inside plays, outside plays, off tackle plays, and then you had option, which Bradford Burger's running what we call an option. It's midline, but it is option. Right. And so he's reading people, so it makes it pretty tough to defend.
Right. And another thing. Atha's carries, he didn't rack up the yards, but he more or less split time at tailback with Rochester, which was in this game, probably really huge because we were so thin on the defensive line, and and Kevin just had to come out sometime.
It was, and that's kind of, there was a couple concepts why we had Austin in there. One of them, one of the plays that we don't run a lot was there, as they started to stop the buck sweep in the overset that we have with, the old jumbo double tight personnel.
Right.
The 6 down was there, and Austin is much better at running the 6 down, just because it's more natural for him. The problem we had was, again, we didn't block it properly. It's so down right now in our playbook that we messed it up, and had we blocked it properly, Austin Atha has big yardage. We kept blocking the guy we're kicking out, so I got one guy blocking him down, another guy trying to kick him out, and the running back hitting him, smacking the back. So just little things that, like I said, when things get down in the playbook, sometimes mistakes happen.
You talked about being short, and from talking to you and the coaches after the other coaches after the game, the big areas that you were shortest at were O-line and D-line.
Yes.
And so, with that in mind, just for me, my offensive players of the game weren't any of those guys carrying the ball. To me, it was Ethan Powers and Zane Hall.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan Powers has never started a Friday night in his life and had to start at center.
Right.
And will be again this Friday night. And then Zane coming in here and doing what he needed to do at left tackle.
Yeah. And in fact, neither one of them started, and someone said it may have been Powers' first varsity snap.
It may have been.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty.
And he's the guy who's having to snap it every play, so he's touching the ball every play.
Right, yeah. Your first varsity snap, you're the one snapping it, and it's the 10th game of the season. That's and with playoff implications on the line.
And to be quite honest with you, one of the most impressive parts of that is we had no quarterback center exchange issues with a guy who probably nervous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different for the quarterback. Every center snaps it a little different.
Right.
So he's been taking snaps from Laddie and from Buppy, and now he's taking it from another guy. So that was pretty impressive as a coach to know that your quarterback and your center were able to do that.
Right. Yeah, and not only those guys play well, that them being able to play well, you're able to keep Baker Dyer at his normal tackle position. You're able to keep Austin Copper at his normal guard position, and the same with Jarrett Laddie. Keep those guys in place, and I know, Laddie's kind of your 210-pound Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
Can play every offensive line position, can play every defensive line position, and can probably still play linebacker if you need him to.
Yeah.
But I know in our scheme, you prefer having him at guard, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, guards make the system run. Now, if we knew we were facing a 50 front like we did against Gilmer, it was easier to move Laddie to center,
right,
because you had to have somebody who's lined up on him every play. And then we had White Gowan, another 10th grader, fill in, hadn't had varsity snaps, and he played the whole game against
Right.
Gilmer. So depending on the front we saw was going to determine which one of those guys was going to be the guy that started.
Right. Like I said, I know, but it sure is nice to have somebody like Laddie.
Absolutely.
You can just kind of
You can move anything around with him.
move anything around with him. All right, switching over to the defensive side of the ball. Just a few defensive stats here. Dawson County, 28 carries for 86 yards. That's almost exactly 3 yards per carry. You'll take that every time, won't you, Coach?
You know it.
So we really stifled the running game. The passing game, they were 28 for 39 for 260 yards passing, which is about a 6.5 yards per attempt average, which is decent. You like, yards per attempt. I think kind of the break line is somewhere 6 or 7 yards. Offenses try to get at least that. But they had 40 yards on an illegal forward lateral.
Yeah,
kind of.
Of course, nobody's looking for that, and I'm not going to blame the officials, to be quite honest with you, because nobody saw it, and let's just be real.
No.
And the other neat thing about, you throw that number out, 200 some yards. Last year, Dakota Sonicson by himself had 5 receptions for 200 and some yards.
Right.
So tremendous job by Coach Nichols in the secondary as well, having these guys prepared.
Right. And like I said, I'm not trying to bang on the officials either. It happened happened quickly. You know, those wings, they can't leave the line of scrimmage until the ball's released, and they had no time to get down there. The back guys are retreating. There was just nobody in position to say, oh, that was forward. You know, I mean, you can't. So we can't fault them for that.
It's easy for me to be even with that and see the situation, because actually it took me by surprise.
Yeah.
But so you're talking about an official who's not prepared for that situation.
They're not prepared for it, and they're not in position to see it clearly, and couldn't
right.
physically be. And you know, being up in the booth, to their credit, the clock guys immediately went down there and goes, yeah guys, that was forward. So they acknowledged it, but you know, we said. Anyway, moving on. Don't want to give the impression we're beating on the officials. That was one that was just going to slip through. So you take that out of the play. Their longest fully legal pass play was a 32-yard touchdown. So we stopped the big plays and made them grind it down the field.
Yeah, and that's what our ultimate goal was. Like I said, put 5 in the box. And they ran it almost 30 times, which if they're going to run the ball 30 times, I'm pretty happy about that, especially when you run it 28 for 80 some yards.
Yes.
So, you know, we got them to do what we wanted them to do. I mean, as you're an offensive coordinator and you're a spread, you count in the box. And
right.
your numbers, I mean, there was one time they had tackle, guard, center, tackle, guard, tight end, quarterback, running back, 8 in the box to our 5, and they ran it, and we're hitting them in the face. So just tremendous job by doing the things that we tend to do well.
Okay. But we can't overlook, forced two fumbles, and recovered both of them.
Yep.
And A.J. Jones, another interception at the cornerback position, and really he almost had a second one, probably would have if the ball hadn't been thrown so poorly.
That's right. So, yeah. And just you know, he's coming along as a 9th grader, and he just has a knack for breaking on the ball and doing things that sometimes you just can't teach it.
Right. Yeah. He wasn't really involved in the offense, but he, you know, between the interception and moving over to special teams now, you know, took the opening kickoff back, you know, all the way to Dawson County 46, and actually was maybe a little too patient there at the end, waiting on his blockers to take care of the kicker.
Well, you know, you got a kicker standing there, and you got 4 blockers up there. You're hoping somebody's going to go get them, and they all just were like turn around, like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah, and credit to Caleb Bonesteel. He just knifed through there and cut AJ's legs out before.
You know, the funny part about that is we had so many issues with quarantines and the way they handle kickoff, and they have the ability to put it in the end zone every time. So I said, I'm tired of having to try to teach these guys. You know, it was like one day I said, okay, let's go left return. And then we ended up having a kid quarantine. Then I was like, okay, let's go left return today. And then we had another kid quarantine. So I said, the heck with it. We scrapped it. And I think on Thursday we put in a double wedge. And we put linemen on there, which have not been on special teams with skill spots. And so we put it in, and the kids looked at me and they said, who runs this? And I was like, we do. But that's what people used to do a long time ago, and they all kind of chuckled.
Yeah.
And Monday they're like, hey, are we gonna run that double wedge again? Because that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, but it's cool when it works. It's not so cool when it doesn't work.
Right, and you know, it was pretty clear Dawson County really wasn't prepared for what to do with that, because that was the only one they kicked deep. They squibbed every other kick after that. They're like, oh, we don't want to bite that one off again. More special teams. Caleb Wyatt blocks another kick. I think I heard that's at least his 3rd field goal or point after his kick, plus he blocked 2 punts this year, so 5 block kicks.
Yeah, tremendous job. Now, to Dawson's credit, we appreciate the gift they gave us. Unfortunately, I don't know how their running back is, but he's their wing, and when they went and lined up for a field goal, there was no wing, so they had 10 on the field. So it made it a little bit easier, but because he goes so hard, he almost ran right by it. But so, again, just another block for him. And 20 years, there's probably nobody who's done as many as he has.
Yeah. Well, and then you mentioned them only having 10 on the field, so I guess we could say we got one of those plays back from 2 years ago where they had 12.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would have liked to have had that back that night, though.
yeah, I know, that would have been nice, you know.
It had been 3 years in a row beating them to get the number 2 seed, so.
Right. And you talked about, Cameron Chris being out and having to, having to put new long snapper, short snapper in, because that's his job. And, we did have a one miscue, but, definite miscue on the punt, and then, may have cost us an extra point as well. After that, kind of settled down, and we're pretty solid with that the rest of the game.
We did, and again, you're looking at kids that haven't done it all year. They're in not just a backup role, they're a backup role, and that's it's kind of been the idea, the situation we've had all year. A lot of times you got 3s and 4s, and sometimes 5s now playing on a Friday night that don't normally get to.
Right. Yeah, which brings me to the next, on the sidelines, coaches really earned the pay this week, didn't they?
They do. They do a tremendous job, and just keeping themselves in the game and trying to just pick and choose and fire. We got to have this guy. This guy's got to come out. And that guy's. I mean, it's a moving target.
Yeah, I won't get into any of the specifics, but in talking to several of them, I've heard several kind of amusing stories. It basically turned into a cattle auction every time you wanted to pull somebody out. It was like, okay, need so and so out of the game. Well, it was. It was a negotiation every time you make a substitution.
It was, and I don't know that I've never gone to a coach and said, I need that kid off the field because I got to have him for offense, because our lack of depth was starting to get some of these guys tired, and you could see it. And it was like, I need him to go over here, get him out for 2 or 3 plays, and let that kid get a blow, and that kid's got to get a rest. And I mean, like I said, it was a moving target.
Yeah.
So, credit to the kids. Credit to the coaches for recognizing and being able to make those adjustments on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did have one extra assistant coach on the sideline.
Yeah. Yes, I
I heard, this is supposed to be a casual observer, but knowing Bob Christmas is not going to stand by.
No, we talked all week, and he would come in and he'd say, hey, now don't forget, if you need something, you let me know. I'll help you out. And I didn't go to him, but he definitely came to me.
That was kind of a unique situation with him basically being,
Well, I can tell you back, I guess it was my first year as head coach, I was on his sideline in the same situation in the playoffs, and he was, getting some feed from me as well. So.
Oh, yeah, you can't turn it off, can you?
No.
All right. Well, we've covered all the Jimmys and Joes of the games. So why don't you take us to the North Hall Tire and Wheel film room and show us the X's and O's and
Sure thing.
how that went.
Talk a little bit about the option football, begin with, that we put in with our quarterback, Bradford, and the different formations. Just a couple of little things to look at. The first of what we call our gut or our midline. The reason why we call it gut is because it's in the middle. That's what people call a midline. In this case, what we have is a trips formation, tight end trips formation. They lined up in a 50 front, which we weren't expecting, but regardless, the quarterback is going to read this player. Now, this concept is what we call Y fold. Normally we'll lead with a back on the linebacker, but he's out, and now the tight end comes up underneath and blocks the linebacker. And Bradford's going to read this guy. If he were to come down and squeeze and play the dive, then Bradford would pull it. In this case, he's so wide removed, it makes it really tough. And I think more than likely, just from looking at what we're looking at, we're going to probably block the read just because of the concept that we have. And now we have everybody blocked. As you can see, Bradford's riding Clark with his eyes in there, and we're blocking the read block because he's a 9 technique, which makes absolutely no sense on their side of the defensive ball. And we have a good pickup right here, probably about 9-10 yards, maybe a little bit more. Later in the game, we come back to it, and we run it instead of wide folding it like we've been doing. Later, after about the second or third time of running it, this outside guy started falling back in and making the play for about a 3-yard gain. Now I want to put the Buffalo back in and T-Lander and have him just come straight and blast block on the play side linebacker. And Bradford can still make the read. He's going to read this guy, and if he comes down on the dive, he's going to pull it. We're turning out, turning out. And we'll slow it down right here so you can see that guy comes down, he squeezes and he takes the dive. Bradford steps off, gets in the hole. You see where T-Lander is. There's one guy in the hole to beat, and he makes the free safety miss. Trucks that guy. And then scores a touchdown in the process. And again, that is just, it's a double option, okay? Quarterback's either going to hand it off or he's going to pull it himself and get in the beat guy. Basic plays that we run a combination. We run either what we call the buck sweep, okay, or we run the power. The difference is if we're running power with a guy in the backfield, he's coming and kicking. What you'll see, the regular buck sweep, he's going to come and run trap and try to hold the linebacker. The most impressive part about this, again, is if you saw the other week when we were looking at Cherokee Bluff, the way we just crush the edge. And when you do that, you create a very large space for a person like Clark to get up in and make some moves on the defenders, allows the guys to block, set up their blocks, and Clark turns it into a good play. So that is the basic 8-play, or what we call the buck sweep. On this one, we're running a different set, and we don't have a wing back, so it's hard to block down and kick. So what we do right here is we're going to run power. And now on this one, everybody's still down, and now he becomes the kick guy instead of the play side guard. The other issue that we have is a lot of people are setting this man to an inside shade of our guard, and when he pulls, he's getting in the backfield, taking away our backside wrapper. So we want to block down, block down, block down, kick out, and wrap with the backside guy. Again, same concepts. It's an outside sweep, or actually it's a C-gap sweep. And then we pick up some good yardage on it. Defensively, some of you have heard we made an adjustment. We call this a monster. So monster meaning, Mike, we have a one linebacker look. We got 5 in the box, and we're trying to invite them to run the ball because they have numbers over ours. In the past, we've run 3 down linemen and 2 linebackers. The problem that we've had is that we just struggle up front because that's not something we typically do, so we're having to move people left, right. And I said, look, let's go ahead and let our front 4 do what they normally do and try to eat up people. And we did a pretty good job of it all night long. As you can see, they're running power, and we do a good job squeezing, so we're down, we pull up another guy, and then the linebacker's able to scrape over top and make a play. We're a little slow on the secondary coming up, but we've got to play pass. But the free safety comes in and he cleans it up. It's a 3-yard gain on their part, but this is the first series of the game, so we're still getting used to running something that we've never done because the fits for the linebacker are a little bit different. The other thing that it does do for us is to the short side. This is our typical linebacker, but he's playing an extra nickel back, and his width and where he is to the short side takes away the backside slant. He's in the slant hole, so they've got to avoid throwing the slant, where a lot of teams will do that to the short side. Again, another look. They want to run it into the boundary right here. Looks like they're running what we call counter. They're pulling two, handing it to the back. We should have my defensive end get his head in the hole and trying to get the ball to bounce outside, which it does. Laddie comes off his block and he's able to make a play and bounces it to our nickel back. And because of the boundary, they're close to being inside the box, like we normally do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So he's not far outside of what he normally does. And he's able to rally up. Again, they're running a counter scheme where they're bringing these two backside guys, one kicking, one wrapping. We should squeeze and spill, which we do, which we bounce the play outside. And then we've got one linebacker scraping to make the play, the other linebacker scraping to go ahead and make it as well. Watch both linebackers come in. Again, not major adjustments, but something big enough that the offense was struggling with it. And this is what it looks like normal. So now you have both guys in the box. This is our shade defense in our traditional 4-2-5 look.
All right, Coach, I want to talk again about the coaching staff, and which we've already covered once, but it was in mime.
Yes. A lot of lip syncing there.
So that's the lost episode, folks. That went that the sound didn't come through, and so we had talked. First off, you got the entire staff back from last year.
I think that's the first time since I've been a head coach that's happened.
I mean, I think it's the first time. I don't even remember that happening with Coach Christmas,
right.
Having the entire staff. It's the staff also. It's a very experienced staff. I counted up over 150 years of high school coaching experience. I'll be honest. Since we talked a few weeks ago, considering how the season's transpired, just the overall, the overall experience of the staff. There's no rookies. It's them's first rodeo, and what they've been able to get out of the kids. I'll tell you, a lot of people. I'm not going to name names, but a lot of people close to the program have come to me and said, this. At least based on what they've done this year, this may be the best staff we've ever had, top to bottom.
And I'll tell you, I'm blessed. There's no other way to say it, but I'm blessed. Not only are they great coaches, they're great men and super loyal. And that's one of the things you need as a head coach. You got to have people that are in there that buy into what you believe and buy into the things that you want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that there are times on Sundays and Mondays and Tuesdays that we don't totally agree. But I think one of the things that's been said is we disagree well.
Right.
And we don't keep our egos when something doesn't go our way. And there's times where even as a coach, I want to have it my way, and I know as the person in charge that I can do that. But I also want to hear what my coaches have to say, because sometimes you learn a lot from that, and we'll debate back and forth. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the thing I love about the staff is when we make a decision to go, we go.
Right.
And there's no, can you believe such and such? That doesn't happen.
Right. And so would you say that's really the, obviously we'll talk about them individually, and we all know that they're great, knowledgeable coaches, but that's really the key to what makes them great collectively is eventually, you come to a decision and everyone starts pulling the same direction.
That's right, and that's 100%. I have had situations as the head coach where I've not had that.
Yep.
And it makes for a very uncomfortable office, and it makes for uncomfortable Sundays, because that no matter what you say, some folks just feel like it's got to be their way. And when they don't get it their way, you can just feel the tension in the room. But with this group, there is none, and that's just a tremendous thing when everybody can kind of lay aside everything and just move forward with what's best.
Right, and I don't think knowing, being in a group that if you know that once the decision's made that everyone's going to be pulled together in the same direction anyway. You know, if you're a member of that team, of that group, I would think that really gives you a lot more license to speak up, you know, as a voice of dissent, you know, when that decision is being made. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you're not, you don't feel like, well, I better not say that.
Right, and we've had those, you know, whether it's handling player discipline, whether it's handling how we want to do something on special teams, offense, defense, whatever it might be, how we want to handle practice that week. That's what I love is my coaches do have the ability to speak up, and we all have the ability to come together, and we're not going to look at you and point a finger and say that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
Sometimes we'll sit here and bounce it back and forth. It's just like, I'll be quite honest with you, something as simple as the little disposable water bottles. I didn't like the idea at first because there were so many other rules, and I'm like, well, you know, somebody else is touching it, and because that's a rule, and it's. But when it came down to it, it was the best decision we had. Right. And even though I shot it down the first time, the other things weren't working either. So this turned out to be something great. I know it sounds silly, but those are the kind of things that get dealt with. And, you know, the coach, when I shot it down, wasn't like coming back every week, we need to go back to the water bottles. Finally, I just recognized that that might be what we need to try, and it's worked well.
Okay. Well, let's kind of go down the list here. We'll start with the faculty coaches, the ones that also have teaching positions here. You know, and so just going into seniority order here, Stuart Cunningham.
Stuart, the word I love about him is loyal. He has been everything for me. You know, when I took over, he's already been a head coach. So a lot of times I'm picking up the phone, calling him, how do I handle this? How do I need to do this? What do you think about that? And obviously as time has gone by, that's become less, but I also know if I do have those questions, I continue to answer it. He was on staff with Coach Christmas for a year, so he's been with us for 8 years. And if I were having to be in a street fight, that's the first number I would call. But what a tremendous man. But that's the loyalty part of it. Stuart would be there for anything.
All right. David Nichols.
Man, growth. The word I love is growth. Growth as a person, growth as a coach. Tremendous football mind. And the neat thing, the one part, well, there's a lot of parts that I could speak with him forever, but the White County game, we put in this new, I don't want to say new defense, but we put in something that he kind of designed, and every day he and I would sit down and we were poking holes in it, and we just tweaked it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even on Friday. Got it right. So his mind for the game is tremendous, especially on the defensive side of the ball. He does not want to fail. That's one thing that's pretty impressive about him.
Right. Jason Crisp.
Jason came probably second or third year in, came to me, wanted to be a part of North Hall football. His son and his daughter are coming up through the program and through the school, and don't know how much experience he had before that. But the one thing that I do know about Jason is at the end of every year, he wants to get as much info as he possibly can to learn, because he loves the game. So he's just been a student, tremendous student over the few years, and his growth as a coach has been off the charts.
Right, and you know, and the thing, I mentioned it last time, and we want to get in here, got particular respect for Jason, because out of all the coaches on your staff, I mean, not that teaching anything's easy, he's got by far the hardest teaching job
Absolutely.
Of any of you,
Absolutely.
maybe combined actually.
Yeah.
Jason is he's the self-contained special ed teacher at the middle school, that, you know, and since my wife has the same position at high school, I know exactly how time-consuming, how stressful,
And how interesting your day can be.
How interesting your day can be, and how loaded full of paperwork your day can be, and how much you, I mean, and then to come out and be able to, you know, successfully coach football, varsity football on top of that, you know, that's something, and it's really hard to appreciate unless you're around it. Chuck Hudson.
Chuck, I got to know Chuck a little bit when he was here years and years ago. I believe he was doing student teaching at the middle school, and then had a job and ran the middle school program for a year or two, and then kind of got away with another friend of ours, Blair Armstrong, and he worked on Blair's staff for years. They won a state championship together at Peachtree, and you know, when they weren't in the playoffs, wherever he was, if he's at a program that went in the playoffs, Chuck was always here. You know, he went to school here, loves this program, he was always around us, and probably one of the first guys that, when that position opened, I tried to hire. And it took me 2 or 3 years to finally get him,
Right.
but he's happy to be here, does a super job. And when we're talking about trying to get him, I had to get him in as a running back coach,
Right.
something he's never done. But he just wanted to be a part, did a great job there, but he's at home at North Hall, and at home coaching the offensive line.
Yeah, and he just, you know, he just doesn't turn it off after the game, because, you know, I frequently come in, you know, talk to you coaches after the game, and he's got his nose buried in the film. He's already making notes and everything. Hey, we'll just interrupt the entire conversation. What's going on?
Coach,
Hey,
look at play 55.
Play 55.
What is he doing? I don't know, Coach.
No one else has even cracked the film open, and he's already breaking it down. And finally, Todd Welburn.
Todd, what a great addition. You know, I had the opportunity to work with Todd just a little bit at the FCA All-Star game, and kind of liked his disposition. He was friends with Mr. Wells and worked on his staff, and you know, I was trying my best to find somebody to fit the position, and you know, Billy Wells, he said, look, here's just a guy. I know him, I'll vouch for him, but I want you to hire your guy. So we sat down, we talked a little football, and hired him, and he has done a tremendous job. He's also brought a little bit, I don't want to use a different mindset, but he's made me think outside the box in certain terms of things, and it's helped us this year. Tremendous help with some of the things that we've done, because we were lacking in some areas, but as time went by, doing some things, like I said, just without a wing sometimes.
Right.
We've done it before, but not to the level that we're doing it now, and a lot of that goes to Todd.
Yeah, and you know, one thing about Chuck and Todd, the last two, you know, you mentioned Chuck coached at Peachtree Ridge, and Todd spent most of his career coaching in Gwinnett County. Is it brought a little bit different? Have they been able to bring a little bit different perspective coming from larger classification schools to here?
Well,
and just
in general, possibly. I mean, Todd's also been in multiple wing T teams, so he's just brought a different mindset a little bit from the wing T thing. But I don't know that it's really made a big difference in terms of that. I mean, Chuck, I think he was at Peachtree for 1 or 2 years. I mean, that was it, and couldn't wait to get out. Didn't like the bigness. Todd has been in the big side of things, got to Jackson County, didn't enjoy it, came back to Gwinnett County, and has loved being here.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know that it's helped or changed or anything, but it's been different.
Okay. We've got 3 community coaches also. First off, guy that's been in every level of this program, you know, from junior Trojans to varsity player to now varsity coach, Caleb Parrish.
Yeah. First of all, what a great young man.
Right.
He has helped me in more ways than most people even know. I was in a bind. I think it was my 2nd year. I needed a coach, so I brought him in, and he coached for me. Then he took on full-time student ministry, so he was more of in a voluntary role, be out here loving on the kids, loving on the coaches. And then I had 2 coaches leave late in the school year, and trying to hire a math teacher was just almost impossible.
Right.
And we bantered back and forth as a staff in meetings about the best way to go about it, and you know, who needed to be 2 sides of the football, and who could do this and who could do that. And when it was all said and done, I felt like the best thing for the program was for me to coach defensive line and to coach quarterbacks. Well, the only way I could do that is to have somebody I could trust to do what I needed them to do, which was to coach just the JV quarterbacks and the JV line. So while I unfortunately don't get to coach the younger kids in those.
We're at the Cedar Grove and Loganville, everything's in 6A, so about 3 classes, they lost by 1. And I said, and then the winner has to get, you know, whoever comes out of that, you know, 1 more game, and then they're potentially facing Crisp County. So now, as far as our region matchups, you know, Region 7 AAA, matched up against Region 6 AAA. Obviously, we're talking about White County and Rockmore, and that's, you know, White County can very well win that game. They showed, they showed what they were really made out of this past week against Cherokee Bluff, at Bluff. But 9-1 Bluff has got 4 seed Lafayette coming to them. And Dawson County, who, I mean, we know how we had a great game against, we know how dangerous they can be. They're heading to a Daresville. What's your thoughts on those?
You take those two, I'll be honest with you, I feel like Cherokee Bluff is gonna be perfectly fine.
Right.
Lafayette, they've got a couple talented, they got a talented back and a talented quarterback that can mess up a play and break loose and score and make everybody miss. They're very talented, those two. I don't see them as being what I would consider an execution offense where they're just gonna 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever. I think they beat a lot of people and score a lot of points on big plays. Defensively, there's nothing there that impresses me. I've had to watch them against like North Murray. So I think that they're going to be okay. Dawson County could have their hands full. Daresville on offense is very good. They're big, fast, physical, and they execute well. So they're going to have their hands full on trying to stop that offense. It's wing tee-ish, so it's more of what I would call your pistol wing tee, and they're really good at executing it. And like I said, their offensive line is enormous, and they're fast. I was like, whew, I bet they probably average about 270, 280 across the line, and they can move. There was a lot of guys on North Murray that were glad the game was over. A lot of traps and some bodies on the floor. Defensively, Daresville's good. I don't know how sound they are in everything, but they're good. So they'll have their hands full.
Yeah. One thing I noticed looking at the results of 6 AAA games is those top 10 teams have, they put up a lot of points, not just against the lower tier teams. They put up a lot of points against each other.
Right. Yep.
And so that brings us to the one that we're actually more interested in. We're going to be hosting the North Murray Mountaineers, and first off, before we get to North Murray specifically, we're hosting.
Yeah.
And that's important. We all know there's a little bit of brickyard magic come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's what, 13-2 at
13,
home.
13-2 all time.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and in fact, 11 straight wins.
Yeah.
At home.
I think the last one we had was a 0-4 in the quarters with a minute and a half left to go to game.
Yes, when
number five beat number 5.
Yes, and one of the most ankle-breaking moves I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, looked like it was going to be a 10-yard gain, and all of a sudden our guy is on the ground saying, "Where did he go?" Yeah. 14-7 loss. In fact, I figured it out. By the time we kick it off here, it will have been 5,852 days since we lost a playoff game here.
You do a lot of interesting statistics. I will have to give you that.
Yeah. Well, and you go back, all your freshmen and most of your sophomores weren't even born.
Yeah.
The last time we lost, so almost half your roster was not even alive last time we lost a home playoff game.
Yeah, it was interesting to recognize that last year was the last group that I'll coach somebody that was alive when I got here. That's an interesting stat.
Yes. So now, getting North Murray Mountaineers, relatively new school. I think it's their 12th season playing football.
Probably about that.
And but yeah, they made 5 straight playoff appearances. Last year they made as far as the quarterfinals, finished with 11-2 record. And we talked about, they've got some, apparently potent offenses over there. North Murray averaged about 39 points per game on the season, but they also gave up about 28 points per game. So what are you seeing out of them?
Well, they have some very talented athletes. on their field. Number 23 is as good as anybody I've seen in a long time. And they're going to find ways to get him the ball. He's going to play receiver, he's going to play slot, he's going to play tailback, he's going to play quarterback in the Wildcat. He's a 4.4 speed guy and can break ankles, so he's really good. They've got another receiver in number 1 and another 6'4", 6'5" kid in number 6. Quarterback, even though he's a 10th grader, he commands the offense well, throws it well, runs it well. The one thing that does stand out, though, is that nobody against them has played sound defense. When you play in a team that's, whether it's option, spread option, option to option,
Right.
You've got to have a dive player, a quarterback player, and a pitch player. And a lot of teams are missing 1 or 2 every time they run option. Well, I can do that at 53. I'm not taking anything away from them, so I think they're going to have a little different look facing our defense on Friday night because we're very sound.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the kids that can make plays, and they've lived off of big plays. But that's because a lot of times there's nobody there to make the play. So I'm not taking anything away from them. They're very, very good and very sound in what they do. Defensively, they like to be in a 4-3. They like to keep 3 linebackers in the box if they can. They'll bring a safety down. They may bring a backer out of the box for what we do. We don't know 100%. They've played one team in Rockmart that's very similar in a way, but they're more spread, empty, shotgun wing tee type stuff. And Rockmart struggled because they went to what we call a bear front, where they have a nose, 2 tackles, and Rockmart didn't have anybody to block back on the pulling guard. And so the kid who was lined up on the pulling guard made tackles in the backfield all night. Well, we're not going to face that problem because of how we run our stuff versus the way Rockmart does. So. But like you said, they give up a lot of points. It's kind of hard to really gauge. You know, even like when we went and played LFO that one year, it was kind of really hard to gauge because you just don't know how everybody really is because they play a lot of games in the region.
Well, that and that big ridge of mountains tends to separate Northeast Georgia and Northwest Georgia football. There's just not a lot of crossover.
Right.
You know, except with few exceptions. You know, those being on the 515. You know, basically Fannin, Pickens, and Gilmer are the only ones that are kind of positioned to play both of them. It's kind of it's difficult. You know, back when we had the almost all Hall region years ago, but we had Pickens and Gilmer tacked on. You know, I used to jokingly refer to them as Region 9 because they didn't fit anywhere. Again, as you mentioned, it's hard to get a gauge like it was with LFO because there's just no common opponents.
Right.
And so you mentioned them stacking the box. I
don't worry about it.
We've kind of seen that for 20 years. It's not it's not like it's new. I mean, you know. There were numerous plays, you know, this past week where we saw Dawson County with 10 within 5 yards of line of scrimmage. We'd split one guy out, they go put one guy out there with him, everyone else is right there.
Yeah. And it's kind of what we do. You know, we could say, well, we need to throw it more, we need to do that. And there's times where I feel like we do need to throw it more. But it all comes down to when I'm averaging, or we're averaging, 8 yards a carry, why throw the ball?
Right.
Now, deep shots, yeah, you're going to beat people like that on deep shots. And we had one, we threw it a little bit short on Friday night. We probably would have taken one and taken one to the house on a deep throw. But my biggest thing is that we've had to get better each week in little increments. And like I think you and I have mentioned before, is the biggest problem with people when they struggle is they go away from who they are.
Right.
And for me, it becomes, let's get better at who we are, and then we'll just continue to add every week. Right. And a lot of people may not have seen that on Friday nights, but we do add every week. Yes. And you saw Bradford the last 2 weeks. I think the last 2 weeks he's rushed for nearly 180 yards in 2 games. So that is what his number one talent is. He is a very good runner, and you're going to see a lot more of him as the season progresses.
Well, and I was thinking about now that he's kind of settled into the offense. You know, and you know, Bradford doesn't have the top end speed that a lot of guys do, but when you look at it, I mean, but he accelerates quickly. He's got good vision, and he's got enough speed.
He does, and he's physical.
And he's physical.
That last touchdown run there, outside linebacker, he kind of gave him the old and just trucked him.
Right.
So,
But you know, I was just thinking back. You know, like I said, while he doesn't have sprinter speed, he's probably the fastest quarterback we've had since Andrew.
you know, if you're looking at 40, CV was,
Yeah.
but like I said, he reads it so well, and
Yeah.
he's in the secondary so fast. Like, I was watching last night. I guess it's like the North Georgia Sports Blitz or the Blitz or whatever it's called, and they had video of the game.
Yeah.
There's twice where he's running the ball, and they're over there looking at the running back, and he's running down the field because he does such a great job riding that guy into the line of scrimmage, pulling it, and then just hitting the open hole fast.
Good really ball him. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, sorry, David. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but David enjoyed running over people so much more than running away from them. You know, we rarely got to see David at top end speed because he would find someone to run into.
That's right.
You know, he figured if they're all laying on the ground, they can't stop him. All right. Well, thanks, Coach. That pretty much covers everything I had for the day. That's going to wrap up this episode of the Trojan Football Coach's Couch. Again, the playoff game is this Friday night here at the Brickyard, 7:30 against North Murray. Tickets are going to be available through GoFan very soon. We're not certain about streaming yet because GHSA rights to streaming of playoff games. So stay tuned as far as that goes. Next week on here on the Coach's Couch, we'll of course recap the North Murray game. We'll talk more about the history, the culture of the program. I think we'll talk about the evolution of the facilities here in the last 20 years, and hopefully talking about our second round opponent. If not, we'll think of something else to talk about if we can't talk about that. But thanks for tuning in, and go Trojans.
Go Trojans. Yeah, that was something I had to call Sam about yesterday. I said, Sam, you know, you can't be pumping out the YouTube. He's like, well, why not? I said, he goes, oh yeah, GHSA owns rights. I was like, yeah. So there's stuff I got to send to him about that, and we'll kind of